What's good, Denver?
What's up, Denver? I hope you're doing fantastic. We are continuing our coverage and our excitement for the Denver Jazz Fest, which is just weeks away. So in support of that, we have Don from DL Media joining me. Don, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Ryan. Glad to be here.
Yeah, very pleasure to meet you. You delivered us Carmen Lundy last week, which was an absolute joy to get to know her. And honestly, to see inside her studio a little bit was a real treat. It was amazing. Now, before we get to Denver Jazz Fest, I want you to give us a little introduction to your company, dlmediamusic.com. You represent just absolute legends in the game. John Patitucci, John Schofield, Keith Jarrett, Lonnie Liston Smith. I mean, just to mention a couple. So tell us a little bit about your company.
Well, I began my company right after I was working for MCA Impulse Records in New York City. Impulse was a storied classic label, the home that John Coltrane built.
Impulse is my favorite imprint. I mean, the records that they put out, you see that spine, you see that orange and black spine, you just buy it. You just buy it, period.
Yeah, it looks like the fleece top that you're wearing right now.
Yeah, it's very appropriate, isn't it?
But yeah, I mean, Impulse, like Blue Note, Prestige, ECM, there's a number of very distinctive time-honored brands in jazz. And I was very, how can I say, humbled and honored to work 20 years for Blue Note Records. After I left MCA Impulse, started my own company in New York City as a jazz publicist. Back in the late 80s, there was a need for that. There was a lot of jazz record labels. There were a lot of artists. There was a lot of media. And that's what's really profoundly changed in the last 10 years or so, the demise of traditional print media. Newspapers all across the United States had staff writers who covered jazz, pop culture, pop music. I mean, the New York Times doesn't have a jazz critic. I mean, they have a few people who will write freelance pieces now and again. NPR used to have a full-time jazz critic who reviewed albums on Fresh Air, for example. CBS Sunday Morning, Dr. Billy Taylor, every other week, had a 6-minute feature on a jazz artist. CNN even reviewed jazz albums on a program called New on the Shelf. So People Magazine had a jazz review every week in their publication. Rolling Stone covered jazz. That's all completely changed. Late night TV, although has a lot of jazz artists playing in their various house bands, they routinely would have jazz artists sit in with these house bands. Not the case. I booked Stanley Tarantino on David Letterman. Yellow Jackets played on Johnny Carson. It was a different time.
I'd be interested to hear your take, because it's not like the music hasn't evolved and changed. And it's not like the world's best performers. Just take Kendrick Lamar, arguably one of the biggest artists in the world. You know, he's had several albums that could be definitely are full of jazz players. I mean, it's probably in that avant-garde kind of fusion type theme that really Impulse began. You know, why do you think that the nobody wants to report on jazz anymore?
Well, I think it's just the overall way that media has become marginalized, and it's been bought and sold and repackaged, and pop culture has kind of moved on. I mean, in some ways, it's kind of sad because jazz is so hip and sophisticated and timeless, and it's America's only indigenous art form. But I think a lot of people feel a little bit intimidated by it. Maybe they haven't had any interface or experience with the music in an environment and say, oh, that's jazz, I like that. You know, in some regards, jazz can sell everything but itself sometimes, and that's very unfortunate. But then you mentioned Kendrick Lamar and his classic record, Pimp a Butterfly. Well, Kamasi Washington did the string arrangements for that.
Yeah, Robert Glasper's all over it.
That's right. And look how they have flourished and blossomed in the music. I mean,
Terrace Martin, like that whole kind of new school West Coast thing. It's just absolutely unbelievable music. Thundercat.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think a lot of those artists have been embraced here in Denver. I mean, Denver has a very strong history of supporting quote jam bands. The whole school of Fish and musicians who kind of come from that ilk. And we have an artist this year in our festival, Dominic Lally, who plays in the band Big Gigantic.
Yeah,
So I mean, you look at that parallel, and you look at Kamasi and Kendrick Lamar, and you start to really see some interesting things. Nils Klein playing with Wilco. I mean, there's a lot of examples over the years. Branford Marsalis playing with Sting
sure.
and sitting in with the Grateful Dead. Even Ornette Coleman sat in with the Grateful Dead. Uh, so jazz has hung around. It's more than hung around, but it's because a lot of these who are iconic, they recognize the significance of jazz and how it's profoundly influenced their music. I mean, look at Charlie Watts. I mean, there's another
Yeah.
example who he had a jazz big band that used to play regularly in New York at the Blue Note for many, many years. I mean, Mick Jagger, those guys, they love jazz.
Yeah.
So there's always been this flirtation, association with jazz and rock and popular culture. It's just the way that the media has almost blatantly ignored it for
Yeah.
the last 10 or 20 years. And in some of it, when I talk to people in the media, I said, well, where's the coverage? And they said, well, we don't see it on Instagram as much as we see pop artists. So it's kind of an apples and oranges thing.
Yeah.
There's certain shows that'll put an artist on, but they want to see numbers of Instagram numbers by certain artists in terms of who their audience is and who they're reaching, which is unfortunate. But fortunately, here in Denver, we can work with venues like Cervantes
Yeah.
and have successful shows there to grow our jazz audience with having bands there like Ghost Note and Motet, who are
Yeah.
playing this year. I mean, Ghost Note was on the festival last year. They did so well that Cervantes brought them back for 2 nights to play with Motet, which is one of the more important bands, foundational bands of the whole crossover movement here, the jam band movement.
Totally agree. Boulder guys, but we'll give them a slide for Denver's northern campus.
Mhm. Yeah, in Boulder, we have Pat Metheny playing opening night in the festival. That show's about sold out. Branford Marsalis is playing at the Boulder Theater. So we recognize the importance of Boulder County and what's happening in Boulder, and that's why we have them in our festival. It's about inclusivity. We have 15 different venues spread out all around Denver, and like I said, 2 in Boulder County. And we have 3 new venues this year that we're working with in the festival. Cleo Parker Robinson Center for the Healing Arts, their brand new building that just opened in January.
I haven't seen it yet. It must be extraordinary.
Yeah, it's a 240 seat black box theater, and that's where Carmen Lundy's going to be performing. Also, Jose James, who's a great, great singer. He's played in Denver before. He's done tributes over the course of his career to people like Bill Withers, Billie Holiday, and he's going to be doing a John Coltrane tribute because in 2026, the year that we're in, is the centenary of Miles Davis and John Coltrane. So we have a
Incredible.
number of shows in our festival that will pay tribute to those 2 legendary artists. One is Keith Oxman, who's a very well-known, highly respected jazz educator and saxophonist who's
Love
been
Keith.
in here for
Yeah.
decades. He's going to do the Love Supreme Suite in his show at Dazzle on the closing night of the festival. And
Some guys just look like a Tenorman. Keith Oxman, he's that guy.
kind of big burly sound,
Yeah.
burly,
Chiseled features,
right,
just an extension of that horn.
right.
That's incredible. And we're very fortunate, to have a jazz festival to this caliber. Now, jazz has always had an amazing home in Colorado, largely because Denver is kind of an island. We're 12 hours from everywhere. So all the players that like are in the greater Colorado, let's say, region can all have a spot here. Of course, the legendary El Chapultepec is fantastic. And, I was the founding music director of Dazzle and was able to like build a jazz program with the team down there. Shout out to Donald Rossa and
Yeah.
all those guys, who have done such extraordinary things over the years for jazz music. But the caliber of players here. I know Eric Gunnison is on the festival, and
Mm.
Ron Miles, of course, rest in peace, who made amazing music throughout his entire career. So Denver does really have a strong jazz pedigree, as odd as that may sound for a sleepy little cow town for most of the duration of jazz's flourishing.
Well, I think for a couple of reasons for that. First of all, there's 5 institutions of higher learning in the Front Range
Yeah,
area that have very prestigious jazz programs. Probably, I mean, arguably the most distinctive and well known nationally is UNC Greeley. They've had a
yeah,
jazz festival for what, 49 years?
you bet.
And, you know, Mr. Landry up there has done an incredible job.
Yeah,
And you have Remy LeBoeuf who just won 2 Grammy Awards, who's running the jazz program at the Lamont School of Music at the University of Denver.
yeah,
John Gunther, who takes a backseat to no one as a tenor player, runs the
great
program
player.
in Boulder. Great
Yeah,
player. Plays in the CJRO. And of course, Dawn Clement, who's a nationally renowned pianist in her own right. She also runs the jazz program up in Washington State in the summer. She took over for John Clayton at a prestigious program there. And who am I forgetting here? Metro, UNC, and of course up at Fort Collins, they have a wonderful program. Down at down in Colorado Springs, there's a jazz program. Then you have Paul Romaine's program, the CCJA. So you have a lot of musicians who have come out of these programs.
yeah,
Even Denver School for the Arts, Rico
absolutely.
Jones is going to come back from New York. He's an alumni of DSA, and he's going to do a workshop for those music students there. So it's a very rich educational hotbed of jazz here that we have. And of course, historically, Five Points area was known as the Harlem of the West.
You
So
bet.
the territorial bands that came out of the Midwest, Denver was always a prime stop on that tour.
And you could add the beats to that. Of course, Neil Cassidy's from here and Jack Kerouac was scurrying all over the place because
Oh, yeah.
ultimately, at some point, if you're going from New York to LA, you got to get over the Rocky Mountains. And why not do it in Denver?
Yeah, that's true. And I guess that was a tough go for them because wasn't that before the federal highway was built?
Yeah,
They were hanging out.
they were doing the mountain passes.
Yeah.
Oh, brutal.
Right.
Amazing. So, what's your affiliation with Denver Jazz Fest?
Well, so I first came to Colorado in 1991 to help out a good friend of mine, Jim Horowitz, start Jazz Aspen. We had known each other from New York City when I was living there, working in jazz. And I just loved Colorado so much coming out here in 91. I'm not from Colorado originally, but I've been here off and on since 91. And it was clear to me over the years that Denver was missing a national jazz festival.
Yeah.
Five Points, great community event, 5 stages, all the best of the best would play every year. It was the best street fair west of the Mississippi, but it kind of met its fate, unfortunately, although our festival began planning 2 years before that happened. And I approached David Froman, who's an established musician, educator here, and has run the well-known Gift of Jazz nonprofit. And I approached him and I said, there should be a national jazz festival here. Denver has all the ingredients, has Kuvo, Dazzle, all these schools that we talked about. Those are your stakes in the ground. Those are your foundational stakeholders. And if we could get buy-in from all of the people in the community, then I think we have something here. So it took us some time to kind of wrestle to the ground, so to speak, and build it back up from there. And that's what we have now going into our second year. So my role is as the artistic director who has a national lens because I programmed the Portland Jazz Festival for 10 years as a consultant up there, ran that organization from 2010 to 2020. And being a national jazz publicist for all these years, 38 and counting, and working on various festivals in other countries as a marketing consultant, I have the relationships with agents and managers and keep my finger to the pulse. And with the experience in Portland, it was invaluable. It gave me the ability to transfer a lot of what I created in Portland to sustain that organization and create something here with David Froman.
Incredible. And I'm really grateful that you do that, because, and I say that because I know firsthand that jazz in this day and age isn't necessarily the fulcrum of commerce, let's say.
Yes.
That there has to be a true love and passion behind the music. You find that to be true?
Most definitely. My son, who's worked in music, he's in real estate now, but he said, Dad, you're never going to get rich in jazz. And I said, no kidding. I said, but at least I've been able to put food on the table and you've had a bed to sleep in. So, and I love what I do. And that you can't put a price tag on passion, as they say.
Yeah.
And for me, that's so important to do what I love. I mean, I started in college with jazz. I was a DJ at San Diego State, and I worked on the campus culture committee, bringing jazz into San Diego State. We had a Monday night series in a venue there called the Back Door, and I just basically rolled from there. And I was fearless in wanting to get to New York because I was a California kid growing up, and I realized that was a film and TV town. And that I kind of hit the wall there in radio, and I worked for the Playboy Jazz Festival as their publicist, but really wanted to get to New York. And I finally had that opportunity, and I took it. And I lived in New York in the Philadelphia area from 1984 up until about 8 years ago.
Yeah.
So when I came here.
Incredible. I love it. So, Denver Jazz Fest is a great spot for people that might be interested, that are jazz tangentic. It's the kind of genre that's
jazz adjacent is the new.
Hey, there, we'll take that
buzzword.
Jazz adjacent, but that it's the kind of thing that everybody knows that there is a jazz for them. It is just a very dense genre with multiple subgenres.
That's true.
I think from the talent that's assembling for Denver Jazz Fest, there is it's emblematic of the diversity of the different sounds. But each of these bands, I mean, these are major players, major hitters, so people can really get a sense for that if they want to get tickets and go to the Denver Jazz Fest, which is denverjazz.org, and go check out the playlist. Now, aside from the players that are on the festival, if we have people who are interested in jazz, they like, let's say they've heard Kind of Blue, you know what I mean? They've been through that portal. They've heard, the Charlie Brown Christmas album. Everybody loves that. What are some guaranteed hits that anyone's going to be able to pick up a record and to be accessible to them? Let's start with the Blue Note catalog and then give me a couple from Impulse.
Okay, from the Blue Note catalog. My favorite Blue Note record was Lee Morgan's Search for the New Land. Dexter Gordon, One Flight Up.
Can't beat it.
Herbie Hancock, Maiden Voyage. Wayne Shorter, Speak No Evil.
Nice.
Grant Green, Idle Moments.
Ooh, solid.
Joe Henderson, Mode for Joe.
Did you say Idle Moments?
Idle Moments by Grant Green. Joe Henderson, Mode for Joe.
My daughter got me that record for Christmas this year because she is her first year in college, and they had a little record store. And so she went down there and was like, hey, my dad's a jazz head. What should I get? And that's what they recommended.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, those are all classic albums, but they were among my favorites and some of the first records that I bought as a teenager. I mean, Impulse has not had the long run and was more of a avant-garde label, but not completely or exclusively. But, I would have to say for me, John Coltrane's Crescent course, Love Supreme. Um, McCoy Tyner, Reaching Forth. Also, the Coltrane Ellington and the Coltrane Hartman were great. Alice Coltrane, Journey to Satchidananda was a fabulous record. Archie Shepp, Four for Train. Albert Eiler, New Grass. Marion Brown, great artist. I can't recall the album title, but yeah, I mean, that's some great music, I'll tell you.
Real good. You know, the Lonnie Liston Smith records were great on Impulse.
Oh,
Really like
Flying Dutchman. Actually, those were Flying Dutchman, that was a label founded by Bob Thiel, who was the house producer at Impulse, who produced all those John Coltrane records.
no kidding.
He was the one who produced a lot of those Lonnie Liston Smith albums, like Expansions,
So good.
Extension. Yeah, great
What,
stuff.
and then the Pharoah Sanders records that he was
Oh,
putting
of
out.
course, Pharoah Sanders, Themby.
Themby. Oh my gosh.
The
Yeah,
creator
actually,
has a master plan.
you know, Peter Summer, another great Denver saxophonist. I took my first date to with my wife. Sorry, we've been married 21 years. My first date, I took her to Dazzle. This was when it was still kind of a Chinese fusion restaurant that was doing some shows, and Peter Summer was playing. And I was trying to show off with my jazz knowledge, which, you know, she loves me anyway, put it that way. But I went up to Peter and I was like, "Hey, do you know a little Pharoah Sanders?" And he was like, "Da da 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 da." He's like, "Yeah, I got that." And then like literally went to the band and was like Themby and like boom, hit it. And so my wife, my girlfriend at the time, our first date, she was like, "Wow, you know what that is?" I was like, "Yeah, I know. I know a little bit about jazz." I'll always be grateful for him though, for like making me feel like the man that night.
Pharoah had such a distinctive sound. I had the pleasure to work with him twice in Portland, arguably the greatest jazz concert that I'd ever been involved with that I produced. 10 years ago, we did a whole Coltrane festival in Portland called Coltrane at 90. And we had a show called Universal Consciousness. It was a tribute to Alice Coltrane with Robbie Coltrane, Pharoah Sanders, Jerry Allen, Andrew Cyrille, Brandy Younger, the harpist. And it was just a phenomenal, and Reggie Workman on bass, who played
Wow.
bass with Alice and John Coltrane. He came out from Philadelphia for that show.
Were they doing the curtons and all that good stuff?
All of it.
Ooh,
It was
Ooh.
phenomenal. And then Pharoah came back 2 years later to play with his quartet. And it was one of the latter, he was maybe 2 years from when he passed, and we were fortunate to have him that final time in Portland. What a towering figure of music he was. And that last album that he made right before he passed with the London Philharmonic,
Oh yeah.
beautiful record.
Yeah,
Sound
I
Prince
remember
or
that.
something.
Yeah. That was like was that the late 90s?
No, it was actually much more current than that. I think it was recorded about 6 years ago.
Oh,
at
no kidding.
most.
Oh, I'm
It
way
was the
off.
last
Maybe-
record that he ever made, right
Cool.
before he
I'm gonna have to look that up. Maybe I haven't heard that. Cool. Don, I
You
could
know,
do this
the-
all day long. You lived the career that I wanted. How dare you?
Well, I'll tell you, we have Bob James in the festival, who's late 80s now, 40 years since he's played in Denver. This is a big deal. I mean, to have Bob James come
Huge.
with a Ukrainian saxophonist who's been playing with him now a few years. And we also have a great tribute to Miles Davis by Miles Davis's ex-keyboardist, John Beasley, who's a Grammy Award-winning composer and arranger. Played with Miles in the early 90s.
Fantastic.
And that's going to be a program of a complete career retrospective of Miles's music with Kurt Rosenwinkel, who all the guitar heads out there know who he is. He's going to be on that show. And it's an all-star band of great young, swinging, hard-hitting jazz artists.
Unbelievable. What a great show, Don. Anything I can do to help promote, you know, the jazz fans out there are small, but we're mighty and we stick together. So if there's any way I can help you promote anything you're working on, I'm very happy to. Like I said, I'm very grateful and I can speak for all of Denver for all your hard work. Putting a festival together of this magnitude. It's truly incredible. And a lot of like local, just fantastic players. Jeff Jenkins, he's a buddy of mine. Hugh Reagan's absolutely amazing. Hazel Miller is just a darling in Denver. Fred Hirsch. The list goes on and on. So people definitely check out denverjazz.org. There are, venues all over the city, all the way up to Boulder. So chances are there's one near your neighborhood. Don, what's the best place for people to connect with you personally online?
Well, they can send me an email to don@dlmediamusic.com. They can reach me there directly.
What's your TikTok?
You can reach us on Instagram and Facebook.
Yeah, nice. I love it. I love it. Amazing. Don, this has been a real treat. Thank you so much.
Okay, Ryan, great to see you and hear you. And I'll be looking forward to seeing you at the festival.
You bet.
All right. Take care.